Liz.
From More Than Words. We do this every week and we never get the time right. Just cut it out, Liz. Just say your name. You know I'm gonna
It's
say,
it's the anticipation, like, oh my God, I'm about to talk. It's my turn. It's my turn. But I talk
it's
all day long, so I don't know what's the difference. We talked about this a little bit yesterday when we had our intentions meeting at
mhm.
this coffee shop that here in Houston. And we talked about how like I'm first generation American, first to go to college, and also I'm in a biracial uh marriage. And and I feel very different and outside of my family a lot of the times. I get a lot of comments of like, ooh, she's educated, she has her college degree. I feel very different than a lot of my family members, right? And then something happens, and then I go right back into my culture, and I'm like, no, I'm still here. I haven't gone anywhere.
That's what you mean. Like it's coming up. I feel something coming up. It feels familiar. It
The, the
feels
well,
it feels family dinnerish. It
and it's
feels
comforting. Yeah, it's also very comforting too. Like, yeah, you know what? No, that is my culture, and I'm holding on to it. And yes, I at certain times in my life I've had to assimilate many a times to fit into different spaces because I didn't feel like I belonged. Um, Especially working in a very white male dominated industry for such a long time. I had to kind of shapeshift a lot, and sometimes I got lost, sometimes I came back, but I'm definitely back right now in my culture, in that comfort zone, and it's very comforting. And just,
wait, you gotta give us an example. You all vague and corporate. If you
no,
don't
I'm
tell us
vague
what
and
you talking
corporate.
about, what are you doing here? Like who
So
is we talking to?
in our
What happened? What
in
happened?
our culture, we have this thing called a manda. Manda. It's a manda. It is a Mexican tradition for milagros or miracles. And usually when time of uncertainty, sometimes it's health, sometimes it's wealth, sometimes it's just difficult times that you're going through, and it's either for you or you do it on behalf of someone else. And what you do is you take like a miracle, and you you kind of pray for it, and you say, okay, if this adversity, if we pull through to this and everything works out well, I'm going to take this milagro, this coin, or it could be different things. Like it could be a picture, or sometimes people take like hospital bands or whatever it may be, crutches. And I'm going to take this to the saint that I prayed to. And I'm going to take this to and have a pilgrimage and take it to this church and pray and give my gratitude and my thanks to this. And that's Amanda. And it's a family event. So I grew up I people always tell me when I went to university all these amazing places that they that they went for vacation. I would go back home to Reynosa to see my family, and more often than not, we would be taking pilgrimages in minibuses. So we were like 2, 3 minibuses packed to the rim. We were all going, and everybody's different people had different mandas or gratitude moments, and we all drove up to La Virgen del Chorrito, which is um, the waterfall of the Virgin. And so it's a big, big church, and we go and do these mandas there. And of course, as a teenager, you're like, gosh, this is boring. I want to go back to America and, I don't know, eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or something like that.
Right. It's summer. It's summer. I
It's
don't want to do
summer.
this.
I don't want to
Yeah.
be doing mandas. I want to be watching TV, going eating my bolis. And like, that's what I want to be
Yes.
doing. I don't want to be doing
Yes.
mandas. What are you doing?
Yes.
So I started thinking about, okay, so what's happening right now in our family, we have started phase one of moving over to the UK. Well, I think it's like 100 billion. I don't know what phase we're in, but we're in a phase. And my husband and my children are over in the UK, and I am here. And there's so much uncertainty. I feel stuck. And I start thinking about like a lot of our coaching clients, right? And so the things that they go through, that where they have these feelings of feeling stuck, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And it's like, I have two choices, right? I have lots of choices, but in my mind, I have two choices. I have one where I can be constantly frustrated and like constantly crying, like in a telenovela, like real dramatic, like, ay, Dios
Mhm.
mío, right? Or I can say, no, everything's going to end up working out the way it should. There's a plan, there's reasons why this is happening. And so I don't want to be the frustrated, anxious side of me. That's not what I want right now, because it's not helping me in any kind of way. So what I did was like, you know what? I'm gonna do a manda. I'm gonna do a manda for this, and I'm gonna like sacrifice something. And then once everything's resolved and it works out the way it should work out, and I'm back together with my family, then I will go and do a pilgrimage. I'm gonna have to find a church in England, or I don't know, maybe I'll make my own church. I don't know, something, but it's gonna be some version of a pilgrimage. Why not go to church, right? We've talked about me being agnostic.
I was about to say, what's going on here? You make it a church? I don't know how to get involved. Don't co-sign that for this podcast. And I didn't say that. I just want to put your name underneath that part in the caption because I don't know what you're talking about. I looked at you. I said, you had me at church, but creating an experience so that
Yes.
you can create that
So
vision. You
creating
know,
my own like pilgrimage experience, creating that
yes,
church experience, because which is what I do normally, right? So then I
yes.
started thinking about my Milagro story and how I come back to DEI. And first, what comes up for me is the differences and the commonalities, right? We all have fears. We have a lot of loss. Sometimes we're grieving things, but yet we process it differently. And my approach is very similar to what I saw during those pilgrimages. And I take it back to my tias, right? I take it back to my abuelita and my mom, and how they bonded together in a community to help someone. And it wasn't themselves all of the time. More often than not, it was for other people. That was also my answer to your question from our very first episode when we introduced our podcast to everyone, and you said, where does this reach out come from? Why did you even reach out? And this whole experience is, and why community is so important to me, and it's part of my thread, it's part of my core, and it's definitely one of my values. It's that manda, it's that reaching out for other people, ensuring that they're okay, doing check-ins. And that's who I am in any space. Like, I think about who I was as a leader in my workplace. My check-ins, my flexibility, the coaching, the accountability. It was like a workplace manda for my group to ensure their like sense of belonging and their community and their safety in whatever way, shape, or form that meant to them. So I think it was so interesting that something I was so against growing up, right? Like, I want to be in the summer, I want to be over there with my English speaking friends, is something that is serving me at 38 when I have my own kids.
That's when them traditions show up. Them traditions show up when you get grown enough to understand. You be like, I don't know if I understand or I quite get it. But let me just say, first of all, I appreciate this conversation around your pilgrimage. Now, you done gave us the history. I was like, oh, Liz with the history, and all the Espanol. I was like, okay, you better lean in on your culture, honey. I'd be like, okay, I was proud of you. I was writing down, I was like, you better go ahead. You ain't told me about this manga. Why was it involved? Well, I could go with you. Let me just say, first of all, I'm proud of you, right? Because I know the vulnerability it takes to talk about your journey and the fact that it's full circle as so many people are going through these big old pivots in their life where things are starting to connect and be important to them. But I will say, the funniest thing is I'm listening to this story and I was like, how does that relate to my culture? I said, you know what? It don't relate 100%, but I tell you, the strategy though, the organizing, that part really resonated because I'm gonna tell you right now, anybody though, especially in my family, in Black culture, we strategize, right? So we call each other on the phone. We be like, okay, so you know this going on, right? We know this happening, right? So what we gonna do, right? So I'm coming over. Let's go talk about it even at your house, or we're gonna talk about it on the phone. Or we going, if it's real severe, we rolling up. So we're like, we gonna have to get in the car and then roll down there and see what's going on with the family. And then when we get there, we gotta be you're like, okay, everything good. We gotta scope it out with our eyes. We listening hard. But you know what really got me was when, okay, we about to either fast or food. So we fast when we grown, but back in the day it was food. So we ate. We was like, all right, let's see what we get, see what's going on here. And we would eat versus now we fast. Cause I was like, back then we probably was hungry. You know what I mean? I'm just throwing it out there. I ain't saying we was, but I feel like that was the spirit, right? But then you're right. At that moment, praying, right? Being in communion and being specific about what it is that we all need to be focused on the family, and whether we prayed or we were just like, all right, so you can go check in on them. Okay, you gonna check. Okay, then I'm gonna go over there with a pie. You know what I mean? Like that whole spirit of being in community and strategically understanding that it takes all of us, right, to make things get better, be better, and to work is a collective effort. And to hear it in your way, right? And to hear how I was like, oh, that's how we do the same thing. We just ain't formal about it, but it is a process, right? And then let's just say, the one thing I do appreciate is that, the fact that you shared that story, it goes back to, you're right, when we talked about community, how informal some of the formal traditions show up, even when we less notice it. Like I didn't even connect all those dots until you were talking. I was like,
I have my theory about, you know, especially, well, in my experience, like what I've seen is when I am in moments of uncertainty or moments of I'm not really sure, or it's very difficult situation. I know at the end of the day everything's going to work out the way it should work out. But what I tend to do is I go back to my culture.
for honestly, the full circleness of this conversation kind of sets us up perfectly for our guest today, because the person you're about to meet, right? So we have a guest today, and our guest, and Liz and I are going to tag team this because we have experienced this person differently and in a good way. So when I met this person, right, I'm going to be very transparent. So y'all bear with me, give me the spirit of grace. I was in this course, right? So I signed up for this course. Everybody kept saying it's a really hard course. It's going to really challenge you. I'm like, listen, after CDI, bring it, right? Because coach diversity, hard, right? It gets in your bones and your spirit. This course was a little different. It was just as intense, but at the end of the day, you kind of have a lot of ambiguity, right? Until it all comes together. So what I say is I go in this class, I'm literally 5 minutes in this class, and I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I signed up for the right one. I don't know if this is the right place I'm supposed to be, because I don't know what they talk about. And then I looked around, and you know how you start looking at the virtual room, you're like, who in here? I need some belonging and some community. I happened to glance in my box, right? And I see this person. So I was like, okay, look at this Black woman. All right. She is there just sitting there confidently, and she like comes straight out the gate with a question. I said, wow, so this type of person I need to keep an eye on. So one of the things I remember was one, not only, one of those things I have to do. I'm in a lot of spaces where I'm the only, so I'm always looking for somebody like me, like who is like me? Thank goodness. But this individual asked a question that was so powerful that it made me question if I was in the right class again, because I'm literally 5-10 minutes into this program. I have nothing. I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm not sure if this is at my level. And her questioning skills, her ability to be vulnerable in the moment and ask a question was the very thing that made me say, I'm gonna stay a little longer. And so that type of engagement kind of set the course for how she showed up, not just in that class, but outside of our relationship past that class. So I just want to say that sometimes when you meet a person, that first impression can almost be the very thing that lets you know you're in the right place. And every time I interact with this person, I'll be like, I'm in the right place, right? And then also I need to level up. I need to level up, and I'm in the right place, but I'm gonna level up too. Okay. So Liz, before we say the person, how did you know our guest? And what has been your experience with her?
Well, we were both in that same certification class. And you're right, it was a very difficult one. And I was in a breakout room. I had noticed her, I think at the same time, like you kind of noticed her too, where she did like prompt these really like great questions. And we were in a breakout room, and I was very vulnerable. I don't think I've ever shared this story with you. How can I say this? I shared a very vulnerable moment during that time, and it was about you, as me and your friend, as like, how can I, as a Latin woman, support my friend and be an ally who is a Black woman? And I don't know, I don't think I've ever shared it with Toy that it was you, but it was you. And I think because a lot of emotions were coming up, and she coached me right then and there. Right then and there, she coached me and she said, if you need me, reach out. And that to me, like, again, going back to the mandas and my tias and all that stuff, it that's where the instant connection came from, because she reached out to me in a way that was at where I needed to be. And I don't think she knows that's how she that was the playing field. She met me where I was at, where I needed to be at that time. And then we just our friendship just kind of evolved from there. And so we don't talk often, but when we do, boy, it's powerful. So with that, that was
We
a
love
long
that.
introduction.
Oh, come on, break her out, break her out. Hey, I wish we had
I
music.
want to introduce Toy James, and an author of Talk About It.
Mhm.
She is an incredible DEI facilitator. She's an amazing coach. Y'all pick up that book. Where's my Kindle? I
I
lost.
was gonna say, yes, let's talk about it. Book. If you can, first of all, you better get on it and put it. You better buy it. Don't put it in
Check
your cart because it'll
Amazon
be gone.
cart.
It'll be gone. You won't get
Yes.
it.
Toy James, RedInk Enterprises, all that. We're gonna just drop all these names in
Yes.
here. Welcome
Yes.
to the show, Toy. I'm so
Hey,
happy.
Toy.
You guys are about to
Yes.
have me crying over here. I have not heard either one of those stories.
Yes. That's how
That
we
was
do.
never shared. I remember you both in the sessions, of course, because they were. I mean, again, the course was very. It forced us to be in vulnerable places in order to know how to facilitate vulnerable spaces, right? So I remember those experiences you're referring to. I just did not know the impact, and I think sometimes people forget that when you are just 100% yourself all the time, people see that, feel that, respond to that, and you leave an impression that you just have no idea you did.
Yeah. See how she
But
talked to us? See how she talked to us? That's how she talked. That's how she was showing up in that place. See how you do it? See, she just come out the gate. She don't even got time for it. She be like, let me just say how you show up authentically 100%. Just go on and leave us here. Go on and finish this show so we could just be good.
Yeah,
oh
Go
we're
my
ahead.
done.
God,
We're
I
done. Go
just
ahead, Toy. You got the show.
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back. Just gonna let them know what you
We're
just
gonna go get
gonna
our
take out.
cafecito.
Yeah, y'all got this. Y'all got this from here. But Toy, seriously, I don't know what you said to Liz in that moment, but I never heard that story. So I thank you for that, because Liz has a way of being very cool, calm, and collected. Even though she'll cry on you for like in a heartbeat, she's just a person who has always showed up with me authentically, specifically in those more difficult times when we've been talking about the vulnerability around being Blackness and womanhood in Blackness. So if you are just a 0.5% of what has really contributed to our friendship, thank you so much for that, because I did not know that, and that means a lot to me. And I ain't gonna cry because I ain't got time for it today.
Well,
I really
look, if
don't.
it happens, we'll just, I don't know if we keep it or Buddy will edit it out, but like, I'm a very
Listen,
emotional state, and it's
don't
really hot
start
in
it.
my room.
Listen, I think my AC done went off and my diffuser is going crazy. It looked like a forest fire in here. I was like, I'm glad this thing is blurred. I don't know what's going on. My diffuser on extra.
So one of the things, Toy, that we like to do is to start our guests off with the diversity wheel. So we sent this over to you before you came onto our show, and one of the things that and our listeners, we post this on our Instagram page. So check out our resources stories. There is the diversity wheel, and we like to talk about the various dimensions that either are important to you or define who you are and how you show up in different spaces. So share with us, what are the dimensions that are important to you at this moment?
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing the diversity wheel because it gave me something to think about. So I thought that was a really good question as I looked at it. And of course, I'm at the core, right? The thinking style, which kind of is informed by the external and internal dimensions. I
Mhm.
specialize in inclusive communications and engagement. And I do that because one, I think when you communicate with someone, if you allow them to bring their full selves, right, you get so much magic. You get to learn so much that is like you, different than you, and perspectives you've never considered. So I always found that to be critical. Not to mention, I love stories. I mean, what can I say? I love a good story.
Which is why you have a book out. Have you mentioned that? That
Okay, let's talk
there's a
about
book
that
out?
book. That's a book. That's a book. It's a book. It's a book. And it's on
Every
Amazon.
every organization, any form of community, whether it's workplace, whether it's church, whether I would even say like a mom's club, right? Where you and like especially here in Houston, you have so much diversity. There's so many backgrounds, religion, all this stuff. Your book has really taught me how to talk about it, like how to engage in different conversations and like reach out and hear other people's perspectives as opposed to me judging someone so harshly based on my own perspectives and my own story. So talk about it, get the book, Amazon it, card it,
Yes. Yes.
Prime.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Toy, I think that one thing that also gets me, right? Because if anybody's watching the video, right? Toy is a Black woman. Okay, so showing up with all her natural hair. You better work. Okay. Y'all see why I saw her at that class. I was like, come on, sis. We coming in right here, letting them know we are here. We taking up all this square. We taking all this square up. But what I would say is I love that you started with thinking styles because it's oftentimes people make assumptions and stereotype us because of what we may look like visually or maybe even how we speak, and they would not think that's the dimension in which like thinking style would be something that we lead with. And so, tell me a little bit, or tell everybody a little bit about like what stereotypes typically come up as you navigate this work, specifically if you feel like you lead, right? And that's important to you to lead in a thinker style standpoint.
Stereotypes. Well, as a Black woman, a Black American is really interesting because one, some people don't know that they don't know that I'm Black. They think that I'm a little bit ambiguous, which is hilarious. I'm from South Carolina, so I'm a country Southern Black woman, and so I just find that amazing. But I always feel like I have to prove myself over and over again. The assumption is never that she must already know what she's doing because she's talking about it. It's like, oh, let me see what she can do. Whereas, and we know studies have proven that men, they're basically judged on potential. Women are judged on experience. Who moves up the ladder quicker?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, also, who also got to make sure they let her know we taking this mental health day because we've been moving so fast. We need a break. Put me on a break.
Right,
Put me on a break.
right.
But you're right, though, right? So that some of the things that we talk about is that constant need to have to demonstrate that we belong in that space and switching that mindset for some to say, we're going to do both. We're going to take up the space and demonstrate our experience, but also be authentic to ourselves, which is a new shift, right? Because oftentimes we're like, well, what happened when I get to the table? I don't feel like I don't know if I'm supposed to be there. No. You already there. So we passed shoulda, coulda, woulda. We there. Now it's time for you to demonstrate that experience. But you're right. Most people, we're at that point of authenticity and trying to figure out, what are those spaces where it's beyond competence? What else can we bring to the table?
So one of the things, Toy, that right now when you just said your experience about having to just navigate as a Black woman in different spaces. Now I think about that facilitation course that we did and how you reached out to me. And I'm making this assumption, so you please correct me if I'm wrong here. But your experiences in your past that you've had and trying to always prove yourself is why you're such a great facilitator and coach, because those experiences are driving, like saying, I know how I felt being treated and in a certain way and not having that sense of belonging and not having that community and always having to like go upstream. I'm always going to reach out to people. And
Exactly.
And I felt like in this moment, like it's just come a year later, it's like my manda story. It's all coming back. Ooh, maybe being vulnerable is a good thing.
It is. It's scary, but it's really, if you want the relationships or the experiences that you really desire, you have to be clear about what that is, how that feels, what that looks like, and you have to open yourself up.
Mhm. And Toy, I
Yeah.
guess I have a question. When did you realize that you had this ability to be an inclusive communicator and connector?
I think I've always done it, honestly, because I have, even in my friend circle, I have groups of friends. So if someone's like, oh, I need somebody who does X. And I'm like, hold on, let me reach out to my friend. I think that they do that. So I just think because of the community, even if they're
Mhm.
disconnected from each other, they're still a part of mine. So let
Mhm.
me build that connection because I'm an only child, right? So I had to work at this, and I know what it's like to do things in silo. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's more difficult. Sometimes it's necessary to at least start in silo, but you always need to build a community to support you, whom you could support, all of that. In the workplace, I worked in public affairs, corporate responsibility, and communication. So I've always had to include other people in the work that I was doing. Not to
Mhm.
mention diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Of course, you have to include other people. That's the job.
Mhm.
Wow. How interesting that the story that I shared is our like how we're kind of still talking about this, right? Like we're not still talking about, but how it comes up, how we're it always goes back to like how we were raised, the community that we were in, our cultures, our traditions. And we talk a lot about like story you use this a lot, storytelling as well too. And it's like this really is your kind of survival guide on how, and this is how you show up in places. It's so
Yes, I think
beautiful.
storytelling is critical because in those stories, you find the connection. You also see the differences. Again, where the magic is, it's like, oh, I never thought about that, or I've never experienced that. Tell me more.
Mhm.
And if you come from a place of curiosity as opposed to judgment, because you judge the person who's going to shut down, no, please tell me your story. I want to understand your perspective. I want to understand your experience because in that, I understand who you are.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Have you
absolutely.
have you ever asked that question and been surprised by the answer on the other side?
Oh my God, all the time. And I love it. I
Do
love it
tell.
every
Do
single
tell.
time. Oh my
Do
gosh. I can't tell folks business, but just know,
just a little bit, just a little bit. A
but
little
just
I mean,
bit.
know,
it's just a public forum. It's okay.
Nobody gonna know. Nobody
Nah.
gonna know. Nobody gonna know. It's just gonna be us. Everybody be quiet.
but what I will say, when I allow people to be vulnerable and tell their full truths, that they thank me in the end because I'm not judgmental. Because I come with
Mhm.
more questions like, oh my God, that's so interesting. I'd never considered that. Or I never thought I would do that. But in the way you explained it, let me give you something to consider.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
can you imagine though if everyone felt that way, that they belonged wherever they are as they are, that a lot of the isms would disappear? A
And
lot of
that's
the
why we
fights.
do this work. And that's why we
Yeah.
do this work because one of the biggest things that Liz and I had saw specifically when we were working in organizations, either as employees or leading this work, is that oftentimes the individual has no place. It's so heavy on the collective that you just get drowned out. Like in the individual stories is where the work is being inspired and people are actually having like incremental impacts every day in this work. But also what's happening is people are growing and evolving per every experience, and we've been missing out on that conversation because everything is so lofty around DNI. It's like, oh, we got to have change. It's the societal heaviness of it, and it's like, no, no, no. Every day we are navigating these systems and
Every
spaces,
day.
and there is an impact. You don't may not feel it all the time, but if you have been in our communities, our spaces, you read your book or you're listening to this podcast, you are actively engaging in broadening your experience and broadening the what you may have to offer in this space as well. I mean,
Yeah.
to yourself and others.
Yeah. Absolutely. I
Absolutely.
mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Toy.
No, I was just going to piggyback off of what Shara said. Is basically people you hear or you read like on LinkedIn and other social media sites like, oh, we're done talking. We got to do. And I'm like, oh, push it back. What are you doing?
Right.
Who's agreed to it? Who's at the table? Who's having the
Mhm.
conversations? what informed those decisions? Who's it going to impact? No, you're never done talking. It
Yeah.
really is, how are you communicating? And how are you doing that
And
inclusively?
sometimes it's the unspoken too.
Right.
Because we communicate with our eyes and our bodies and all that stuff. It's like, well, what is being unspoken? Because usually that's where the good
That's what
stuff
the
is
truth
at
is.
right there.
That's
Yeah.
what the truth is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
And we're always doing. So that's the other piece. It's like, listen, every day that I show up in this space that I am not welcome and I create a sense of belonging for myself and others, it's the work. It's the work.
Mhm.
It's the work. Because the opposite of that is like, all right, I'm out. This for somebody else. They gonna have to build their own bridge. I'm sorry. This I'm done.
Well, and some people don't have a choice but to do the work, right? Like
Right.
to do that inner work, which is the hardest work that you can do. Some people don't have a choice. They don't have that privilege to say, nah, I don't want to do it today. I'm not leaning in having that conversation. I don't want to have this difficult conversation. Let's do rather than listen, because we've listened for far too long. I'm like, who decided when we were done? Right?
Mhm.
Who was that? Who decided this? Did the collective decide this, or were you just done because it's uncomfortable?
Right, right. But that makes up a good question. So I guess, Toy,
Yeah.
something inspired you. I mean, you wrote this book in the midst of it all. So you're gonna have to tell the folks, how we got to this point. Because I'll tell you right now, when I met you in that class, I mean, that class was hard, right? But when you
Yeah.
were like, yeah, and I'm writing this book and it's coming out, and I said, well, sis, I don't know about you, but I ain't got nothing left. I'm barely in class. Because I don't know if you see 2020 and 2021 repeat. I don't know, but I don't know how you got extra strength. Please tell us, what or who inspired you to write a book, and specifically around the timing of how this all transpired.
Well, I was working in corporate America at the time in the pandemic, so I was home a lot, right? But in the work of DEI, the things I always heard was like, "Oh, we'll have meetings like, well, I don't, like, please engage with your team members, ask how they're doing, check in with them, find out how you can help." Well, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I just don't say anything. And I was like, silence is saying something, right? Silence is an action. And I was like, but what would it sound like if you lived with that? Like, you know what? I care about you. I'm not really sure what to say. I saw the same thing on the news. How is that impacting you? And if you want to discuss it or not, just tell me how I can help you. So I would hear that a lot. And I was like, people really it's fear. Everything kind of boils down to fear of either rejection, negative response, disconnection, whatever that fear is. And so I wrote a book to eliminate the fear. This is how you can do this without really worried about being judged, because the point of any conversation that's meaningful is to understand the other person's perspective as well as your own. So do your homework before you have difficult conversations, and to connect with that person on a human level.
But Toy, not everybody wake up and be like, I'm gonna write a book. So I'm just asking, for the people curious.
Okay.
Because you just said that so lightly. I was like, oh, she got the spirit. She just woke up. Sometimes I struggle to just make dinner. So wait, what are we talking
Yeah,
about
because
from a drive?
we do this, we do like a draft for our guests. And sometimes I'm like, what word am I thinking? And then my Spanish and English get all confused. So if I wrote a book, it'd be like Spanglish. And I would start with one story, and then I'd go over here, and then I'd bring like a Tia story, and then there would be like crumbs because I'm eating something.
But you
Or
have an audience for that, though. There is somebody out there who needs your story. There is somebody out there who will be inspired by that.
See how
She being
amazing and
nice.
inspiring
She
she is.
being nice, Liz. She being nice. Don't go there.
I
Don't
really
tell Liz
believe
that.
that. But no,
Liz,
the
don't.
reason, the
Yeah, go
how
ahead.
really was, I'm sitting on my couch after a long day, because I'm literally, the experience was I had a job with this company that I did well. Our senior vice president was like, Toy, you do this DEI stuff well. How do we keep the communications going? So as a part of a side job that became a part of my job. So I built a program. I was like, if you want to do an event, you could do that. But if you want to keep it going, then give me 2 weeks. So I developed an entire program for the organization, communications, education, and engagement.
One
So
more
I'm
question.
doing both of those. So at the end of the day, I'm exhausted, but I'm in my house all the time. So I am watching TV and I was like, people just don't know how to communicate. So I was like, I'll just write an outline out. So I just watching television. Friday night, I'm not going anywhere, pandemic. I'll just start the first chapter. I'll get some research done. In a month's time, the book was written.
Wow.
Well, the first draft, like it went through a lot of iterations, but yes, because it's written very simply, like it's very practical. It's not like I had to dream up anything. It was very practical. So, and as a coach, the whole book is based on coaching methodology. How do you have a conversation? It's basically how we coach other people. We hold
Well,
space for them and all of that.
when I read the book, you kind of have those moments where you're like, gosh, this is so simple. I feel silly. Like, and you mentioned that you're like, this is simple. Like, why are we overcomplicating it? Let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the foundations. And I love it. Like it's amazing. Now, you did talk about your shift from going into corporate into entrepreneurship. And I will share a story of a conversation that you and I had after my first session. There she goes, reaching out again at people. So I went through CDI. There's my tia. I went to CDI. Now she's kind of like my hermana because she's real young. Went to CDI, had my first session. Toi texts me. She says, hey, how did it go? And she said, if you want to chat about it, just call me. And I'm like, I mean, Toy's busy.
Right,
Like
right.
she's an author. She's a book author. She's a facilitator. Like she has coaching clients. Like she's reaching out to me. And I said, well, actually, like, and at this point, my husband was like, I am done. Like, don't chit chat to me anymore. Stop practicing on me. Stop coaching me. Like,
Don't
I need
ask
you
me
to
another
stop.
question.
I gotta put chicken nuggets in the oven. Okay, stop it. And so I said, well, actually, like, yeah, like if you have 5 minutes, I'd love to chit chat with you. Yep, sure. Call me in a little bit. So I called her and we talked about this shift between corporate and entrepreneurship, because one of the things that came up for me with CDI was and I think we talked about this in another session where I felt like I reached a glass ceiling in my company. And again, as coaches, we always try to figure out why our clients are feeling stuck and how do we create this forward momentum for our clients and this shift in whatever way, form, or shape, and we co-create these plans together that are actionable, right? And I felt stuck at this time. And I felt, honestly, how I felt at that time was like, I don't belong in this room with all these amazing professionals who are already coaching. This is just like a checkbox. Like I'm having to bring out all my armor off and then rebuild myself. So I had this conversation with Toi about this corporate to entrepreneurship, and she shared with me very openly her story. And I don't think you know what that did for me at that time. I like it empowered me so much just by you sharing your story with me, where I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like such a weirdo. I shouldn't use that word. Sherry gets mad at me all the time for using that word.
It's not me. Your son did that. Your son scared me when I said that word. Don't put it on me. He put the pressure on me. I said it. I said the W word. He gave me the look. He was like, and we don't do that. I was like, oh.
We don't use that word. We don't call
word.
people weird. We don't call people weird. But like I felt so especially like in my family, like corporate America was just the next thing, right? Like I took this very scary journey. I already took my scary journey. My scary journey was going to university, graduating, and becoming a professional and working for corporate America. That was my journey. Like that was it. You're done. Like this is it. This is you for the next 30 something, 50 years, whatever. I don't know how long you retire, but like whatever it is, this is who you are. And I said, and I'm at that time, something was pulling in me that said, there is a bigger impact. There is something that I want to give this world, and I don't want to just do it for one organization. I want to do it big. I want a huge platform. I want to empower a ton of people. I want to put my voice out there, and I'm bringing Cheryl along with me, and hence our podcast. And that story and you talking to me helped me shift that. And I thank you for that, because I don't think I've ever shared that with you, but I really appreciate it, and I thank you for that conversation. But I'm pretty sure that shift was so scary for you. So what was your biggest like lesson learned in that shift?
And the shift itself, one, that my community is amazing. Shout out to Dr. Tawana Burrows, Coach Tony Farmer, who have been huge advocates, who kind of called me out like, so when you gonna leave? Got the skills, got the talent, got training, you got everything you need. So what's up? Whatever you do, we have your back. We will support you. Not to mention my friends, my regular friends who are not at all in this field, like Toi, you will be great. This is what you do already.
Mhm.
Do it. Just do it. And we'll support you any way we know how. So when I had the support, and I knew that I was ready, like on paper, but I had to let go of the mindset that, but I work in corporate America. Isn't this a dream? But it became so uncomfortable for me to be there that, and I always say, like, God, the universe was like, I'm making you so uncomfortable because now it's time for you to leap.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But I just took the leap and just hit the ground running. I set everything up. Like, I'm still a planner, and, process everything. So I planned everything. So the day I, turn on the switch to RedInk Enterprises, I was ready. Same day I quit, business was launched.
Wow. So how, how did you reconcile and move past the whole corporate America is the dream?
Because it didn't feel like it. I've experienced a lot in my many years in corporate America. Marginalization. Again, I'm always proving myself over and over again, starting jobs beneath me because I got to get my foot in the door again. All of those things. And the thing is, if you're meant to be there, it should not be that hard. And this is not to say people who are in corporate America, some people love it. They dream of the corner office, and I have that dream and do it. It's not for everybody. And that's okay too. That's why you hire consultants. That's why you need employees.
Period. And go and get that red ink in. Okay, go on there. That's when you put that. That's when your friend be like, and go and check that website out. Okay, I can't help myself. That's that spirit. I'm sorry, that spirit started moving. I couldn't let it go. Listen, I'm not gonna lie, Toi. I'm one of them people. I was like, and when I get that VP, I'm about to be it. I'm the one, right? I made it. But once again, you said something that really resonated with me, is that toughen it through, right? Toughen it through has been always that battle cry of, especially when you've been the only or in the upper underrepresented group, you've had to always go through it, right? Mm-hmm. It hasn't been an option to exit or get off. You always had to go through it. And so, Liz talks a lot about, that privilege, like when your privilege show up. And that's when it showed up for me, because I'll be honest, when I had this same conversation with myself, like, nah, we're gonna have to push through, sis. Like, we gotta get, and we're gonna prove the people wrong. You're gonna achieve these goals, we're gonna do these things. And that ceiling, not only was that ceiling just keep banging my head through the ceiling, I had to accept the ceiling. But what happened was, once again, one of those moments when you realize your access is different. I'm talking to my family, right? Keep in mind, working class folks, right? Working class, aspiring middle class. They were like, well, if it's so hard, why don't you just stop? Do something different. Like, wait a minute, ain't you the same person told me you pushed through? Where does exit come from? And this is what they said. They were like, oh, because you are now at a different place in your life where you don't have to survive. You have enough, hopefully, they gave me the wink, wink, hope your money, right? But don't be doing nothing crazy. But you at the point where you can financially plan to do something different, unlike our experiences have provided us. And that's that moment of, oh, I unveiled another level in the game. that's available to me, that access and some privileges that I could now choose not to go through, but to take my exit and do something different. So hearing you say it specifically has just like was a eureka moment. Like, yeah, it wasn't no longer the push through. It wasn't required for me.
That's so interesting that you say that, Shara, because one of like my guilts from exiting corporate America was the again, going back to my tias, the ungratefulness, right? Like, man, like I feel ungrateful for exiting corporate America and moving towards entrepreneurship, which I know is pursuing my passion, pursuing my purpose, pursuing my vision and mission in life. But I feel ungrateful because I feel like I'm exiting something that is seemingly secure, is seemingly, it's there, you're earning a certain amount of money, way more than a lot of your family members. And it's like, and you want more? Like more of everything, right? Like more of like, and really, it's not just about the money, right? It is about, but that's nice too. But it's also about like my legacy and my vision and mission. Don't lie, y'all. Y'all know money's a big thing, okay? But still.
Oh, yes.
So it's like, I'm glad to hear that your family says that, especially coming from that background, because I made assumptions, and now like, here I go again, my coaching. I'm making assumptions of what my family would say. If like as I left corporate America, I've been making assumptions of what they're saying about me. Like, oh, look at that girl, she's so ungrateful. But they're not saying that, are they? They're not.
If they want you to be happy, and most people do who love you, who care about you, like, okay, this is apparently not your space. What is it that you want to do? What is your next move? How can I support you? That's what
Yeah.
people say who care about you.
So what would you tell that version in this journey that you went through from going corporate to entrepreneur? What would you tell now in where you're at right now in your life and in your journey in this entrepreneurship? What would you tell that person or that version of Toi?
Examine everything, try everything. I mean, you can look at your worst case scenario and move from that. I always played it safe because that's what you're supposed to do, because I didn't have a safety net. But if I don't now, pass, fail, whatever happens, it's on me. Okay, Toi, what is the worst thing that could happen? That's it. My worst case today is you have to go back to corporate America. I didn't hate corporate America. I would just find a space that was more suited for my abilities, that respected me and gave me the things that I needed to be productive and excel. If that's the worst thing that could happen, just do it. Plan, mind you, but do it. I mean, break, was it break your soul or break my soul? Beyonce got it.
That's right.
You won't break my soul. Okay.
Every day, every day.
I play
but I
that
want
every
people to
day.
understand that she's like, do it responsibly.
Right.
But I get it. And so I love that it's now a song that could move spirits to be like, okay, I can possibly do something different. Where do I start?
Yeah.
She planted a seed in people who never even considered that they had other options.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I play that song all the time, and that is my like battle cry, right? Like it's like, you're not gonna break me. Like, come on, I get it. Come on, bring on all ye scary conversations. Bring all ye nonsense. Bring all ye. Guess what? You're not gonna break me because I'm in my purpose, right? So that's the thing. One of the things that I just want to shout out, right, is when you are at that pivot point, when you at that point where you can't go through, like it's not even about going through it if you can waver it or not. You just choosing not to. That a lot of that is really just yourself just starting to really get that confidence to like, I know I could do something else. Like, just pull it up, pull it up. I know I could do something else, and I know I could do something else with. I know I could do something else in my community, with my community, or ask for help. I know that I can do it. It's just because, once again, that resistance, when you know you're supposed to be doing more, it just starts to really fill you up. But when we're speaking of resistance, I can't help myself because I'm nosy about this book. So what is the core concepts about, your book? And what are some of those conversations like your clients call scary? And what kind of advice do you give them? Because I gotta know, like, I read the book. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't read the book. Now I own the book, but
It's
it's
okay.
sitting there looking at me. I just be like, guess what? I know that person. You know what I mean? Just
And
saying.
like anything else, though, books are called to you when you need them. When you need it, when it calls, it'll be there. That's the important thing. So there is absolutely no judgment. Um, I will say, just overall, that like it's called "Talk About It: 12 Steps to Transformational Conversations," even when you disagree, because we tend to have a lot of transactional conversations. A and B, C and D, thanks, goodbye. What does transformation look like? Transformation is really about having epiphanies about yourself, about the other person, about an experience, learning something new, and building strong connection and a deeper level of understanding. So with these 12 steps, and just as an overview, these are not all the steps, but it's just like, how do you prepare for the conversation? Why do you believe what you believe? What are
Mm.
your resources? When you invited the person in, did you prepare them for the conversation? Because they might have triggers. You might have triggers, and you guys both prepare for that. How do you really hold space? What is it that you want to know? How would that change your mind when you hear certain things? How would you respond? How are you going to just really kind of navigate the conversation through its ebbs and flows? What do you feel when you hear certain things? Um, is that going to stop it? Are you safe? Are you making sure that person's safe? And if you don't feel safe, how do you remove yourself? If you do feel safe and it's really a really good conversation and you want to continue, what does that even look like? Because even in the book, there are steps, there are how-tos, do's and don'ts, and stories. Because what? I like stories. And I think stories build connection. So that's the book, like completely summarized in 2 seconds. But I think it's helpful because it's so practical. It's not like so much research. It really is like, this is, if you say this, how does this feel? What happens when you say this instead?
Mm. Now,
I love that.
Cher, what I'm gonna do. You know what I'm gonna do because we had another author on. I'm gonna add this to our book.
Stop. Don't do
I,
it. She coming.
I,
She coming, Toy. Toy, she coming. She coming. She coming. Don't look at her eyes. She coming. She wants some.
Wait, let me show you my little earrings with little puppies because they're cute, right? You can't say no to a little puppy. So anyways, so we're gonna have this book club that we're gonna start. We have another author that we're gonna kick off. Would you be open to come in, like if we put together a book club, coming and speaking again on More Than Words with our book club members?
Absolutely. You're going to ask me if I want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
See, let's talk about it.
I tried to tell you. I was trying to tell you. I was like, look me in the eye. She coming. She wants something. Toy was not paying no attention. I said, all right, she about to ask you something. I knew it was coming. But one of the things, Toy, I mean, first of all, thank you for doing that. Cause Liz go for it. I just be trying to warn people like, I don't know, it's coming. I don't know what she about to ask you, but I know it's coming. Cause you can tell when she building up. You can build it up. Yeah. But I think something that we both love about you is the fact that you show up so authentically, and you mentioned that before, I guess just what has just been your journey to just being more aware of your authenticity in spaces, and how do you coach other people about, really embracing themselves?
The journey is, I remember what it's like to hide and what outcomes that garnered, which were not desirable, because if you're not authentic, then you can't really trust if the other people you engage are, because they're not meeting your full self. So if I wanted the relationships that I desired, which were authentic, loving, whole, then I needed to come in that way. How people showed up for me was actually on them, but because I'm so authentic, I'm rooted in myself, I could see and sense inauthenticity quickly. And I'm like, you're not ready for being embraced by someone like me. Because all I'm going to do is love you regardless. And you're going to be like, I don't know, I've never had that before, because you've never been that before. And so when I coach individuals about how to really show up for themselves, you kind of ask, like, so what has it been like? because children show up as themselves. So what happened? How is this serving you? What would happen if you became more authentic and just went to a space? And as you, what's the fear? Now, let's talk about that fear. Let's examine it and what happens if you did it anyway.
So we hear that that's so powerful, and thank you for sharing that, Toy. But one of the things that I always hear is like people talking about authenticity in workplaces and like bringing your whole self into work. And people are like, well, I don't want you to be authentic at work. And I don't want, like workplace isn't the place that you should be bringing your whole self at work. But when people say, well, I want you to be able to come as you are and be authentic, what does that mean for you in terms of a workplace or any place really?
If I'm talking to a team or a group in a workplace, I usually say bring your professional authentic selves, bring your professional whole selves, because nobody needs to see what I look like in the morning, right? Nobody needs to see me when I'm grumpy or I'm angry about something that's not work related. So your professional self is still being authentic, being open, being receptive, and all of those things, not hiding who you are for the sake of. It is being mindful that you're in a space where you are working for someone else without hindering or causing harm to yourself.
Because I would tell you right now, when Liz asked that question, I thought she was being shady. I ain't gonna lie, because
Wait, what?
no, because Liz, when Liz and I used to work together, I used to be like, listen, so this organization, they prepare for your whole self. We can only handle for you to bring your best self to work. And that's what I kept telling people, because they, it was a whole movement around authenticity. I said, wait a minute now, this environment ain't built for that. We ain't have all the structures for your well-being. And at the time, I'm just gonna make a little jokey joke, but at the time, people was talking stuff like, we need dog insurance and we need this. I said, well, what about caregiver leave? Like, can we start there first before we get the dogs insurance? No shade. If anybody got dog insurance, respect. I love animals. Don't get no PETA on me. But I'm just saying, like, there's some levels to this thing, including what authenticity means. Because once again, when some people say that word, right, a whole self versus being authentic, that could mean I want to come in my pajama pants versus the fact that I want to speak more openly in my work environment, or I don't have to feel more encouraged to be innovative versus some of the benefits that may be more authentic. Like, I don't want to do these things versus the fact that I need these things to be my best self. And so those are some of the things that I think often show up. But I thought Liz was being shady there for a second, but I had to come on back. I had to come on.
I wasn't being shady. Well, because I always like the resistance, right? I like to know the other side. And many people in the work that we do as facilitators is a whole group who resist DEI. I mean, look what's happening in Florida, right, at this time. And one of the things is, one of the comments that I often hear is like, similar to what you just said, Shara, like, well, my authentic self is to be in pajamas. Like, that's what I want to come as. Like, they can't come as that. So a lot of times I hear that from opposing sides to this work, right? As opposed to saying, actually, like, if you just sat down and you talked about it and you talked a little bit about the other person's experiences, you realize that this is something that having open dialogue, having people be able to be able to speak up in a workplace environment and feel safe in a place environment, depending on whatever that means to them, that is very much needed, right? It's like, it's always going to the opposite end of pajamas. Like, why are we going to pajamas? You're kind of deflecting what we really need here. Like, don't bring the pajamas. It's almost like that's the end of the conversation. Oh, well, you want to bring your pajamas? And then that's it, right? It cuts.
And I'm usually like, as a matter of fact, I don't. And that to me is not being authentic. That's a choice of wear. That's a choice of clothing. So I was like, now you're just really minimizing what authenticity is. And so when we talk about being authentic as a person, as a human being, if you relegate that down to pajamas, then you really are pushing against the true meaning of what the work is, purposefully. And so let's talk about that.
I love that. Yes, let's talk about that. That's a great way because we, at the end of our episode, we usually have a moment of reflection for our listeners. Good reflection. One, like, what is, go ahead.
Wait, Liz, before you go there, I just want to ask Toi one more question, because, I think oftentimes, Liz and I come across very extroverted, and you claim introversion, right? You claim it, and I believe you believe it in your spirit. And but one thing I will say about you is, if that is the space in which you show up, I will say that when I experience you, if you never told me, right, that you lean more to introversion, I would have never thought that, because when I'm in a space with you, once again, it's the way you show up. You show up in a way that you're always present and engaged and actively a part of what it is that we're trying to do. You never put it as something that's holding you back. It's almost like you push it forward and allow that to be your power in the space. I just want to at least give the audience a chance to say, is there something that you have learned that might be useful for those who are like, I love this work, but my introversion is getting in the way sometimes because it's exhausting in some form or fashion, but I know I could be amazing in this space?
My advice is to always know your why. My why is simply, I want people to always be honored, respected, loved every day, wherever they are, as they are. And I want them to feel welcomed, right? So how do I do that? I have to be present. And when I don't want to be, or if I just can't, I tell them, like, this might not be the time. This time doesn't really work for me. But I care about you because I genuinely care about other people. I care about their experiences. I couldn't do this work otherwise, because it is a lot. It's a lot to carry. It's so much. But through the tools that I learned through CDI and Veritas Culture, being engaged with the work with other people, other consultants, the community like yourselves, it makes it so much easier, because I know I'm not doing this by myself.
Ooh, child, that was it right there. I was like, ooh, that just came on over me. I don't know, Liz, you gotta close it out. I started listening to the episode and forgot I was supposed to be. I'm sorry. I think I forgot I was a host. I started listening to the podcast.
I was about to hit rewind. Okay,
when is the 30-second?
I gotta quote this. I gotta quote this.
Goodness gracious. I'm so tired of them. I had to put it on pause. I was like, oh, I think I'm done for today. Let me go right.
I forgot we were recording a podcast. We were like, oh, shoot.
Oh, child, that took me.
We got to format and we got to close things out. No, you're absolutely right, Toi. I think all these experiences and these different journeys, like, if we really step back and think about it, like, it really shapes who we are and how we show up into different places. And when we start thinking about others and we start thinking about, I'm not saying putting others first above you. I'm just saying taking their stories and their perspectives into consideration, we really will have so much shift in so many different ways. It's like, get out of your way. You are your only person in your own way. And we all have fears. We all have, again, the loss and grief. We all grieve and we all lose different things. And that's what shapes us and our reasons why we do certain things. But understanding this and bringing self-awareness to one another, to ourselves, that's where the big shift is going to change. And if we can do it in a way that seems more authentic, right? That is more authentic, i.e. these podcasts, i.e. your book, getting together with your mom's club or your church group or whatever, and reading those kind of books and like, I'm adding you to different book clubs here. That's it. But like, you know what I mean? Like, if you just kind of have the tools and the resources, some of these behaviors you have to undo, like behaviors that you've learned watching your family, different generational traumas, different workplace traumas, and they shape you who you are. And as you need those resources and you need those tools and you need those community members. And you also need accountability partners, right? To help you shift yourself and wherever shape you want to go, wherever you want to go. Because doing it solo isn't going to work. It has to be a collective experience.
True. And I would just add to one thing that you said, as opposed to putting people above you or you above them, bring them with you. That's the goal. Because
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
all together. Like we're all with different experiences, but we're all together and we can share those things and recognize our full humanness. I just think that that is a beautiful experience when you get a group of people together and they just honor each other and themselves.
So beautiful. Look at this group. It's so beautiful.
It's true. I think because I'm sitting here now quiet because I was like, you know what, that comparison is real decisive. Like just sitting there comparing and trying to constantly get to whatever the other comparison is. That's what has exhausted so many people, right? Living in that comparison and not realizing that it's the comparison driving you and not your goals and vision or why. So I think that's just one of the things that just stood out for me for a moment because I'm like, you're right. We spend a lot of time comparing for a lot of our life, like we're in school and other places. But when you're right, it's something that happens that's vision driven at a certain point in your life where it's like my why, my vision, my values that then has to move me, right? It's not, it's the next car or the next this. It's nothing that strong just yet. So that's going to pull you hard enough, consistently enough for the rest, the rest of your 30 years or 40, 50, 60 years of life. It's like, you got to have something more meaningful. Or at least those who have opened up have that openness for something more meaningful.
And surrounding yourself with the community is going to level you up too, right?
Yes.
So, and support you.
It's
But yeah, exactly. Your support system. So Toi, one of the things that we like to do with our guests is share with people, our listeners, any favorite resources that you have. One is your book. Duh. I think we plugged that in a couple of times. It's great. Let's plug it in one more time.
Wink, wink.
So, yeah. I hope it's already delivered, right, at your house. But what other resources would you tell our listeners that some of your go-to resources?
And I think I shared this with you guys. My primary go-to is my community. So forge those relationships. There are plenty of books about every topic. There are plenty of shows. Find really good podcasts like yours because this is very authentic and it's honest and it's funny and it's all of those amazing things. So find the things that speak to you, that motivate you, and that also educate you. But my go-to is always my community because there are people who've been in this space for years and there are people who are newer who just have different perspectives I could learn from.
The community is strong though. You're right. Like that's been the winning ticket. Like I'll be honest, out of all the things I took away from 2020, community was one of those ones that I will say that I'm so glad I found it when I did. I mean, it's almost like you knew it was already there, right? Like we didn't just all of a sudden find a community just out of nowhere. But what happened was you extended it or you just really started maximizing it for what it was versus just letting it be transactional, right? And not really spending the time and leaning in on a deeper conversations. But you're right. I think that community, specifically in D&I work, is so important because this work is so hard and you're constantly learning and growing and you have to find places to have objective conversations and absolutely hilarious ones and safe places and all those things, but you have to have the community that understands why you're in this work versus to judge you by what maybe you are experiencing through the
making
work.
Assumptions. Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Well, Toi, thank you so much for joining our podcast and being part of our community. And like you're forever part of it now. Cher's gonna connect you with different people. Just watch her magic. Like that's what she does.
That's what I
do. That's what she does. So like I said earlier, we like to kind of finish off with a moment of reflection, and you absolutely can give our listeners, a moment of reflection. I think for me, a lot of it is like, think about who your community is. That's what came up for me in this conversation. And also think about like what authenticity means to you and what assumptions have you been making about other people's authenticity?
My reflection for today, though there's been many, is going through that you have two options. You can go through and you can go through the challenges, but you can also choose the exit. You can also choose that resistance that you're feeling is the need for you to exit versus toughen it through. And for me, it's coming up not just in this work, but in relationships, things that have felt more challenging than maybe it is from a value standpoint for you, right? Best for you, need for you, whatever those things may be. But it's like, if it feels that resistant, don't forget you got the exit off, pause button versus the, all right, go harder, right? Because that's what
Push
you've been
through.
taught. Push through, right? No, so I'm taking that away. And I offer that to the audiences. We're in your spaces where you could choose the pause, exit, or the no, right? Like, I'm just not, right? In your life, so that you can allow the other places that you need the energy for to thrive. So Toy just gave me that. Come on, Toy. I mean, just coaching my life, just bringing that spirit and them questions. You just read through them questions. Let me tell you what the book isn't, but it is at the same time. Like, oh, it's just the 20 questions of my just read my life. You just read my life in those 20 questions. I couldn't even write them fast enough. I said, let me just read this book. I'm just gonna read the book. I'm just done. I'm done. I'm gonna open this book and do my part. That's what I would do. Okay.
Well,
That's exactly.
I will say I do have a gift for all of your listeners. They will be able to get a $4.99 off using the More Than Words podcast code starting today.
We have a code.
We got a code. We ain't never had no code. Okay, code.
So you'll have to shop through booksbaby.com to get it. But yes. So I wanted to offer that to your listeners.
Yeah, we'll put that. Yeah, we'll put that on our Instagram. What a gift! Thank you, Toy. That's so amazing. We'll put that on our Instagram page once the episode goes out. So yes, how amazing!
Yes, listen, we ain't never had no code. I appreciate you. This is a milestone. I mean, like, take a picture for my mama. Somebody get a screen grab.
Wait, let me take a picture.
Right,
take a picture.
Mama, we got a code, Ma.
I got a code.
See, Toy, this is why I love you. Like, you come into spaces, you bring joy. You got to deal with these two loud people, and you should still show up so authentically. But honestly, that was a moment for me. Like, we never had a code, so I appreciate that. And also, just thank you so much for believing in our audience, right? Like, the fact that you, as an entrepreneur yourself, you're like, it means a lot when you make these types of decisions. So thank you so much for allowing us to take up space. And first of all, y'all, now that y'all got this code, go get 2 books. Buy one for you and get one away. Use that code. Use that. I'm going to buy another book. I'm going on record. I'm going to get this $4.99 off and I'm going to buy another book. But let me just tell you, don't act cheap now. This is what we're doing. And I have to say that because I ain't gonna lie, in my spirit, I was like, well, we're gonna get another book. We're gonna get 2 books. Why that code hot? Why that code working?
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do. But thank you guys so much for having me. This has been, of course, a joy because you guys tickle me to no end. And I still learn things and I hear stories like this, everything I needed. So appreciate you.
Oh, I love it. All right, y'all. Well, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Follow us on Instagram at More Than Words Podcast. Follow us on Facebook, also on More Than Words Podcast. We are on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube. Send us an email. Like, who do you want to see? What questions do you have? Do you have questions for Toy? You also can find her on RedInk Enterprises too. We'll put her link on our Instagram page. But send us questions at lizandshara@morethanwordspodcast.com. All right, y'all. See y'all later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.